Hey everyone, it's Jack here, TalkNorwichCity. Welcome back to another video. It's been a tough week for Norwich City all in all, hasn't it? Last week's really disappointing 3-0 defeat to Queen's Park Rangers kind of kicked off the last 7 days. A rugged 0-0 draw in the week against Portsmouth. Portsmouth then followed up that performance with a 4-0 defeat to Derby County. And then a difficult fixture at home to Burnley, but Norwich City have been really good at home all of this season, all of last season. The home form hasn't been an issue, but a late turnaround from Burnley has meant that we've fallen to a 2-1 defeat on Sunday. This was a look. Burnley are very well drilled, and they will be right up there this season. They still have that kind of just about Premier League quality. I wasn't overly impressed with them. Very different to the Burnley that got promoted a couple of seasons ago under Company. This is an efficient and quite hardy Burnley side who create very little but also give very little up. I mean, their defensive record in the Championship so far is absolutely remarkable. They've conceded 8 goals all season. Norwich City have conceded 32. Equally, they've only scored 26 all season. Norwich City have scored 36. So, this is it was always going to be a game of kind of a low amount of chances and picking your moment and then taking that moment. And Norwich City got off to the dream start. Who knew we could take set pieces? Lovely call from Marcelino Nunez, and Cordoba scores, I think, his first ever goal. Certainly his first for Norwich City, but I think his first ever in professional football, according to Chris Gorham's research. So a lovely moment for Cordoba. It was a brilliant header, and Norwich kicked on well from that. For the first sort of 25 minutes, I thought they were excellent. They clearly had a plan, and thankfully went back to Hofball rather than the kind of momentary the momentary lapse from that in midweek against Portsmouth, where we just had to kind of grind it out and find something, and we did. But in terms of pulling the Burnley players high up the pitch and then trying to break through the lines, I thought Norwich did that really well. Actually, they knocked it about cleanly and found passages. There were very few mistakes. Kellen Fisher's reintroduction back into the side, I thought, was a good one. He looks more cultured on the ball than Jack Stacey. I think they're very different players, but in terms of, I think, Hofball, Kellen Fisher is more suited to the way that we want to play, and Cordoba also very suited to the way that we're trying to sort of play out from the back. I thought Callum Doyle was absolutely excellent for the first half as well. I've never been quite sure about him at left back. And there was a moment, the second goal that we'll get onto was, Brownhill was wide open in an area that Callum Doyle should have probably been looking at. But I thought up against Kelly Osha, he was absolutely he was brilliant for that first half positionally. Just excellent. I think Burnley just tried to find a way to kind of nullify us, and they did so well. I thought the intensity dropped off, as it has done in a few games past the kind of 20-minute mark this season. I think that will be a concern for Johannes, but we're still looking quite thin. The midfield of Marcondes, Nunez and Slimane, I still don't think Slimane is up to full fitness. Nunez certainly isn't up to full fitness. So that midfield in an ideal world would be different, but that's what we're playing with at the moment. But you could tell that the legs were going fairly early on, and the intensity did drop off. The players that were introduced into the side today, and Kellen Fisher, he came in. I thought Slimane looked excellent from the off. Oscar Schwartau, that was a nice introduction on the right wing. I thought he looked good. Still hard to believe that he's only 18 years old. I think again, he was another who tired towards the end of the game, but certainly for the first 60 minutes of this, I thought Schwartau was very impressive. And you go into the half-time break at 1-0 up, and you go, okay, that was steady. That was how we probably expected it to go against this Burnley side. Very few chances at either end. And Norwich were the team ahead and actually looked quite comfortable. And for the first 15 minutes of that second half, Norwich looked comfortable. They had a couple of breakaway chances. Borja Sainz had the opportunity to kind of create something and never quite got it going. And I don't think it was Borja's best game today. There were a few moments where I think he could have probably released the ball slightly earlier than he did. It's clear that he's still, he's got that confidence, and rightly so, that he can do some things on his own. Actually, I think if he were to pick his head up and find a pass, we may have been better suited today, but that's not our biggest issue. The first Burnley goal comes from Flemming in the 68th minute. It's an absolutely stunning strike. I'm right behind it. Johannes and his players will be bitterly disappointed that they were just so asleep to it. Nunez and Zian were the two closest to the free kick. It's a little layoff to Flemming, who just unleashes from kind of 25, 30 yards, and it flies top corner. Nothing Angus Gunn can do about it. Certainly things that can be done from Marcelino Nunez and Ante Zian, who just had completely shut off. Their backs were to goal. I think Johannes mentioned that in his post-match interview, that very disappointed that the players who at that moment should have been occupying that free kick weren't even facing the ball. But still, there was 20 minutes left of this game. Norwich were very much in it. I think it was very evident that we were lacking options off the bench. We eventually finished the game with a front three of Shane Duffy, Onel Hernandez and Ashley Barnes, which is interesting. Burnley had the options off the bench. I don't think Norwich did. The substitutions were Ben Crescene, Cade Gordon, Ashley Barnes, Onel Hernandez and Jack Stacey. The other players on the bench were Forson Amankwa, Grant Hanley, Brad Hills and George Long. So that is the area, I think, where you're looking at and you're going, yes, I know that we've got Sargent out and Kenny McLean is suspended, but if Norwich genuinely want to beat the likes of Burnley at home, which is what we're going to have to do if we're going to finish in the playoffs this season, you're going to need better options off the bench. And I think that's what ultimately let us down today, because at full strength for the first 60 minutes, I'd say, maybe saying that we were the better team is a slight over-exaggeration, but we were, deserving of our lead and, looked as if we were fairly comfortable. It was when the legs started to tire, it was when the substitutions needed to be made. That is ultimately when we came unstuck, and I think the midfield came a little bit lapse. I didn't think any of the substitutes that came on really added much. Not really particularly their fault, just never really got into the game. Onel Hernandez delivered a couple of nice crosses towards the ends of the game. I thought Cade Gordon was really poor when he came on, and I suspect he'll be sent back to Liverpool in January. I think Ashley Barnes is sadly past it for kind of substitute appearance. I mean, what was he, 35, 36 years old? Added very little in this game. I thought added very little against QPR and Portsmouth. And, when Zian has run his race, you need something a bit better from Ashley Barnes if you want to finish top six in the Championship. So that, I think, ultimately was the downfall. And Burnley score in the 76th minute again. There was actually a breakaway from Norwich where this whole passage came from, and it's Borja who had the opportunity to give it, I think it was to Emi Marcondes, which would have unleashed us into a 3-on-3. Borja tries to nutmeg the Burnley midfielder, I think it was Cullen. It gets intercepted, it gets played forward, it eventually falls to Brownhill, who finishes. Question marks over Angus Gunn at his near post again. He was beaten at his near post quite comfortably on last Saturday against QPR. I think he'd be disappointed. That Brownhill strike looked to be a shot that he could have saved, and I don't think has actually been up to form the last couple of months, and whether the kind of contract negotiations and situation around his contract are kind of playing on his mind, but I think he's been better in previous months than he has been recently. I've been disappointed with what I've seen from Angus Gunn. So I was kind of left feeling somewhat disappointed. It was frustrating. There was a really fantastic opportunity for Emi Marcondes in the, literally last kick of the game, who dragged it wide, and it did feel as if it was a game of small margins today. I don't think there was a huge difference between the sides. I think ultimately the difference came from the substitutes that came on for Burnley and those that came on for Norwich. Ante Zian had the ball into the back of the net. It was ruled offside. It wasn't. He was then booked for scoring the goal that wasn't offside but was given offside. So, look, if that goes in, Marcondes scores in the last minute, suddenly you've won that game. Ultimately, it wasn't to be. I don't think Norwich can moan that they lost the game. But it does show, I think, where we're at. And I think we've seen enough now this season. I think we have had a bit of unfortunate luck with the injuries and suspensions, but I think we've seen enough to go, okay, like, we're a mid-table championship side in the current situation. We can dispatch teams fairly easily at home when at full strength, but when push comes to shove and you're without a striker and you're without a midfielder and maybe chuck a defender in there, we're susceptible. And I think we've seen that in the last week or so. It's Sunderland away, and then it's a fairly favourable run of fixtures over the Christmas period. It's Millwall, it's QPR, it's Luton. You should be looking to pick up potentially maximum points from those 3 games. And then you reassess in January. I think we need another midfielder. I think we need another striker. How the Atanasios and Napa will approach that, considering it will be inflated price tags. Josh Sargent will probably be back in the next month or so. Kenny McLean will be back. So maybe if you add McLean and Sargent into the fold, then it doesn't look too bad. But I think there's a depth issue. I think, this team is still adapting to the way that Johannes wants to play. I thought, as I said earlier in the video, for that first 20 minutes, Norwich looked very comfortable in that situation. They looked comfortable with playing some pretty high intensity football and really stamping that philosophy into their game. It was just from that point on, and Burnley were good, and Burnley will be up there this season. So there's no disgrace in losing to Burnley, but to get into the position where you're 20 minutes away from full time and you're 1-0 up and then losing 2-1, I think that'll be really disappointing. And it's been a difficult week for Norwich, and it's not going to get any easier with an away trip to Sunderland. But there are signs, there are moments that you go, okay, this is progressing. Ultimately, it does feel like a transition season. I don't think anyone really wants to hear that. They want to be hearing, we're going to be banging with a chance of top 6. And look, this team could do it. There is every chance. They have shown in periods and in games this season that they are more than capable of beating anyone in this division. But I think over the course of a 46-game season, there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be errors, and there are going to be performances like today where you go, that was so close to being good. And there was just little parts that ultimately let them down. And I think we'll see that a few more times this season. But it's enjoyable. It is enjoyable to watch, as you can hear from my throat. I was singing and dancing in the Barclay. Look, I believe in Hofball. I think we're heading in the right direction, but it's the boring solution that no one wants to hear. Ultimately, I think time is going to be what is a real blessing for this Norwich team as they settle with the philosophy, as they bring a few more familiar faces in that Johannes will like to work with, and as this squad starts to shape up. I mean, you're looking at the substitutes bench today. Grant Hanley, Barnes, Hernandez, Sorensen is injured. All of those plus a few more will probably be gone this time next season, and then you've got an opportunity to really build your own squad. So we shall see. Let me know what you thought down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll speak to you all again very soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.